Four J-20 stealth fighters are running low and fast across the open Western Pacific. No transponders, no radio chatter. Data links tight and internal, passing targeting data between the jets in near silence. From the outside, they look like ghosts, because that is exactly what they were designed to be. Somewhere beyond the horizon, a U.S. carrier strike group is underway. An aircraft carrier, 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, a cruiser, support ships, and roughly 60 aircraft. Billions of dollars of American naval power sitting inside a circle of ocean roughly 500 miles across, and 4 jets are trying to thread a needle through its outer screen before anyone can react. Here's the question at the center of this scenario. Can a stealth fighter actually do it? Can the J-20 close the distance, stay invisible long enough to reach firing range, launch its missiles, and get out before the carrier group's defenses lock on? The next 18 to 20 minutes of this breakdown will tell you exactly why the answer is more complicated than either side wants to admit. Not a newsflash, not a war scare. A walkthrough of the systems and the physics, because the math is the most interesting part. The J-20s are not going to reach the carrier. But the way they get stopped, who detects them first, which system fires, where the kill web actually closes. That is where the real story lives. Let's set the board. The Western Pacific in this scenario is open ocean, roughly 400 nautical miles east of the first island chain. No land-based radar coverage to speak of from the American side. The strike group is operating in a threat environment, meaning it has already elevated its alert state. The carrier's air wing is cycled, aircraft armed and spotted on deck. 2 F-35C fighters are already airborne on a combat air patrol, pushed forward approximately 150 nautical miles ahead of the group. And high above all of it, at roughly 25,000 feet, an E-2D Advanced Hawkeye is orbiting in a wide racetrack, its APS-145 radar disk spinning, drinking in everything within a radius of several hundred miles. The J-20, China's premier 5th-generation stealth fighter, is a serious machine. The jet is large by fighter standards, roughly comparable to an F-22 in overall size, but optimized for a different role. Where the F-22 was built as a pure air superiority fighter, the J-20 is designed to penetrate defenses and reach launch range against high-value targets. Tankers, early warning aircraft, and yes, carrier-based aviation. It carries its weapons internally to preserve its low observable profile. Its radar cross-section, at certain angles and against certain frequencies, is genuinely small. Chinese state media claims it competes directly with American 5th-generation jets. Independent analysts are more cautious, but the consensus is clear. This is not a jet you dismiss. The 4 J-20s in this scenario are each carrying PL-15 long-range air-to-air missiles internally and potentially PL-17 extended-range missiles on semi-conformal hardpoints, though adding external stores blows the low observable profile. They are running a low-altitude ingress to reduce their radar cross-section against surface-based systems, using terrain masking the way it was taught in every Air Force on Earth. Get below the radar horizon, compress the detection window, force the defender to react with less time. The problem, and this is the first thing the math teaches you, is that low and fast over open ocean is not the same as low and fast over terrain. There is no terrain. There is only water. And the E-2D Hawkeye does not care about altitude. Here's where the scenario gets interesting. The E-2D is not a glamorous platform. It does not carry missiles. It does not have afterburners. It is a turboprop aircraft with a rotating radar disc on its back, and it has been the eyes of the carrier strike group since 1964. The advanced Hawkeye variant that entered service in 2014 is a fundamentally different machine from its ancestors. The APS-145 radar has been replaced by the AN/APY-9, an ultra-high-frequency radar with advanced signal processing, multiple simultaneous operating modes, and crucially, the ability to track low observable targets that would slip past older systems. UHF radar is a key point here. Stealth shaping is optimized primarily against X-band and Ku-band radar frequencies, the bands used by most surface-to-air missile systems and most fighter radars. Against lower frequencies, like UHF, the physics of resonance scattering mean that even a carefully shaped stealth aircraft presents a larger return than its designers intended. The J-20's radar cross-section against the E-2D's AN/APY-9 is not zero. It is not large, but it is not zero. What's most surprising about this engagement isn't the stealth, it's the geometry. I spent time working through the detection envelopes, and one number kept coming back. At high altitude, the E-2D can see out to approximately 350 nautical miles against conventional targets. Against a stealth aircraft, that range compresses significantly, perhaps to 100 or 150 nautical miles depending on aspect angle and the specific radar mode employed. But the J-20s are 400 miles out when this scenario begins, and they are closing at roughly Mach 1.5, call it 900 knots. That means they have roughly 27 minutes before they reach the outer edge of the carrier group's screen, and the E-2D has been airborne for 2 hours already, midnight zero. The AN/APY-9 begins painting something. It is not a solid track. Not yet. It is what radar operators call an intermittent return, a faint, inconsistent contact that appears for a scan or two and then fades. This is exactly what a stealth aircraft at long range looks like on radar. Not invisible, not solid, ghostly. The operator flags it. The system's signal processing algorithms begin correlating the return across multiple scans, looking for the Doppler shift that indicates a moving contact, looking for the characteristic pattern of a jet aircraft. Within 60 to 90 seconds, the E-2D's battle management system has assigned a track number to the contact, not a confirmed hostile, a track of interest. The data is time-stamped and pushed via the cooperative engagement capability, the CEC data link that ties the entire strike group together, down to the Aegis-equipped ships below. Put yourself in the seat of the tactical action officer aboard one of the Arleigh Burke destroyers for a moment. You have just received track data from the Hawkeye on a contact that your own SPY-1D radar has not yet detected. The contact is roughly 280 nautical miles out, bearing approximately 270. The system is already computing intercept solutions. Your SM-6 missiles have a range envelope that, at altitude, can reach out to approximately 250 nautical miles in the anti-air role. Against a low-altitude target, the engagement range compresses. But the J-20s are not staying low forever. To reach launch range for their own missiles, they will eventually have to climb. The Aegis combat system does not wait for you to tell it what to do. It begins building a fire control solution against the track the E-2D has handed it, using the remote sensor data as if it were its own eyes. This is the CEC's core capability. It allows a destroyer to shoot at a target its own radar cannot yet see, guided by the track quality of another platform. The two F-35Cs on combat air patrol, 150 miles ahead, are receiving the same data. This is the moment where the scenario splits from what Hollywood would show you. In a movie, the stealth fighters would close undetected to visual range, and the Americans would scramble in panic. In reality, the engagement begins at ranges measured in hundreds of miles, and it begins with data. A faint radar return on a turboprop aircraft screen, flowing through a fiber optic data link, appearing as a track symbol on a destroyer's combat display 250 miles away from the contact itself. The J-20 pilots do not know they have been detected. They are inside their own data link bubble, sharing targeting information between the four jets, their own AESA radars in low probability of intercept mode, emitting just enough to track but not enough to paint a clear electronic signature against American radar warning receivers. They are doing everything right. But there is a detail that stuck with me when I worked through this. The J-20's radar warning receiver is looking for X-band and Q-band emissions. The E-2D's AN/AP9 is operating in UHF. The J-20 pilots may not even know the Hawkeye has been tracking them for the past 4 minutes. The kill web is closing, and the jets inside it do not know they are inside it. That is the real edge, not one wonder weapon. The way the picture is shared faster than the threat can close. Minute 6. The E-2D now has 4 discrete tracks. The signal processing has separated the contacts and is correlating their formation geometry. 4 jets in a loose combat spread, approximately 5 miles between each aircraft, closing at high subsonic speed. The track quality has upgraded from of interest to probable hostile. The strike group's commander has been notified. Now the Arleigh Burke's SPY-1D radar, a passive phased array system covering all 4 quadrants simultaneously, begins seeing the contacts at approximately 180 nautical miles. Not clearly, but seeing them. The Aegis system fuses the destroyer's own radar data with the E-2D's feed and upgrades the tracks to confirmed hostile. An engagement authorization is transmitted to the forward F-35Cs. The 2 F-35Cs have been flying their combat air patrol racetrack for 40 minutes. Their AN/APG 81 AESA radars have been in a passive electronic scan mode, minimizing emissions using their distributed aperture system, 6 infrared cameras covering the entire sphere around each aircraft to build a passive picture. They have not yet seen the J-20s. The J-20's infrared signature at low altitude, from head-on at 150 miles, is below the DAS detection threshold. But the tracks the E-2D has just passed them are good enough for a weapons solution. Here's where the F-35 does something that changes the geometry of the fight completely. The AN/APQ 239 radio frequency countermeasure system and the AESA radar can operate in a collaborative mode. One aircraft transmitting briefly, the other receiving the static return. It is not a clean radar picture, but combined with the E-2D's track data, it is enough to build a firing solution for an AIM-120D AMRAAM. The AIM-120D has a published range exceeding 100 nautical miles in some engagement geometries. Against a target provided by offboard queuing, against a target that does not yet know it is being targeted, the engagement envelope opens considerably. Most people assume the F-35 needs its own radar lock to fire a beyond visual range missile. It doesn't. Not when the CEC is feeding it track data precise enough to support a fire control solution. The common version of this engagement story misses that detail, and it is the detail that matters. Minute 9. The lead F-35C pilot receives weapons-free authorization. She is 140 miles from the nearest J-20 track. She selects two AIM-120D missiles and begins the engagement sequence. The AIM-120D launches from the F-35C's internal weapons bay. The bay doors open for approximately 4 seconds, the missiles eject and light their motors, and the bay closes. On the J-20's radar warning receiver, there is a brief spike when the doors open. But by the time the system processes the spike, the missiles are already in flight, and the F-35 has gone back to low observable. Two AIM-120DS are in the air. Their inertial navigation systems have been loaded with the track data from the E-2D. They will fly their ballistic arc for roughly 45 seconds before their own active seekers light up, and by then they will be close enough that the J-20s will have only seconds to react. This is the first obstacle the scenario throws at the American side, and it is real. The AIM-120D's active seeker range is classified, but is estimated in open sources at roughly 15 to 20 nautical miles. Against a stealthy target that is actively maneuvering, the probability of a first-shot kill is not 100%. A J-20 pilot who receives the radar warning from the AMRAAM's active seeker and executes an immediate high-G defensive break, deploys countermeasures, and turns cold, pointing away, compresses the missile's available energy for a terminal intercept. Some shots will miss, which is precisely why the net has more than one layer. The AIM-120DS are in the air. The J-20 pilots are about to get their first warning spike. One engagement is opening. But what the Americans already know, and the J-20 pilots are about to discover, is that the F-35S were never the primary shooter. They were the distraction. The Arleigh Burke destroyer, call it the forward picket ship, positioned approximately 100 miles ahead of the carrier, has been building its SM-6 fire control solution for 6 minutes. The SM-6, formerly the RIM-174 Standard Missile 6, is arguably the most capable long-range surface-to-air missile currently in service anywhere on Earth. Published range figures are classified, but open-source estimates place the anti-air engagement envelope at over 130 nautical miles against conventional targets at altitude. The SM-6 uses a semi-active radar home seeker for mid-course guidance and an active radar seeker for terminal phase, meaning it can receive mid-course updates from the ship's Aegis system via data link and then go autonomous for the terminal engagement. Against a target flying at low altitude over water, the SM-6's engagement range compresses because of the radar horizon. The destroyer's SPY-1D cannot illuminate a target. It cannot see over the curvature of the Earth. But this is where the CEC data link changes the equation in a way that was not possible 10 years ago. The Hawkeye is providing continuous track data on all 4 J-20 contacts. That data, fused into the Aegis system, allows the destroyer to launch SM-6 missiles on a ballistic arc, up over the radar horizon, and have them guided by the Hawkeye's radar track until they are close enough that their own active seekers can take over. The ship is shooting at targets its own radar cannot directly see. The E-2D is the eye. The Aegis is the brain. The SM-6 is the fist. The tactical action officer authorizes a salvo of 4 SM-6 missiles, 1 per J-20 track. The vertical launch system cells open. 4 SM-6 missiles lift off the destroyer's deck in a ripple, less than 2 seconds between each launch, climbing steeply into the Pacific sky. Minute 11. The J-20 formation is now approximately 160 nautical miles from the carrier. They are climbing. They have to reach effective launch range for their PL-15 missiles against the carrier's airborne assets. And as they climb, their radar cross-section against the Arleigh Burke's SPY-1D grows. The Aegis system updates their track quality from the CEC-derived solution to a direct fire control solution. The J-20 pilots receive their first real warning at this moment. Radar warning receivers in all 4 cockpits alarm simultaneously. Active radar seekers from the AIM-120DS that the F-35Cs launched 2 minutes ago have lit up. The American missiles are inbound. The J-20 pilots execute the textbook response. High-G defensive brakes, chaff deployment, notch turns to defeat the Doppler tracking. One of the 4 AIM E-2D loses its track in the countermeasures and debris. 3 track through. 2 J-20s are hit. 1 takes catastrophic damage to its left engine and must turn away. 1 takes a proximity fuse detonation that damages its sensor suite. 2 J-20s continue inbound. They are now 130 miles from the carrier. Their radar warning receivers are screaming, not just from the AMRAAM seekers, but from something else. Something bigger, faster, climbing down from above them on a ballistic arc at Mach 3.5. The SM-6 missiles. Here's the part worth saying plainly. A single J-20, even if it punches through the first 2 layers of the carrier group's screen, does not represent an existential threat to a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. The carrier itself is enormously survivable. A more honest threat would be a coordinated strike of 16 to 32 aircraft combined with long-range anti-ship ballistic missiles like the DF-21D or DF-26, the so-called carrier killers, designed to saturate the defenses simultaneously from multiple vectors. What this scenario tests is the kill web's ability to handle the penetrating aircraft layer, and it tests it cleanly. A 4-ship J-20 strike, without the ballistic missile saturation and without electronic attack aircraft degrading the E-2D and Aegis sensors, runs into a net that was specifically designed to catch it. We will say what most don't. The scenario is described. 4 jets, 1 vector, no electronic warfare support, no simultaneous ballistic missile raid, is the scenario American planners are most confident handling. The scenarios that keep carrier group commanders awake at night look different. But that does not make this scenario meaningless. It tells you what the baseline defense can do when it functions as designed. 2 J-20s have been neutralized. 2 are still flying. The SM-6 Salvo is inbound. And in the next 90 seconds, the math closes. But not without one more complication that the scenario has been waiting to introduce. The second obstacle arrives at minute 13. One of the 2 surviving J-20 pilots, the one whose sensor suite is still intact, executes something unexpected. He turns cold and goes to military power on his remaining engine, pushing back toward the west. He is disengaging. His wingman continues east, accelerating, still apparently committed to reaching launch range. The retreating J-20 is a problem. The SM-6 Salvo was fired on an intercept solution against targets moving east. One of those missiles now has to execute a significant course correction to chase a target that has reversed heading. The SM-6's data link connection to the Aegis system allows a mid-course update. The Hawkeye is still tracking, but the geometry has changed, and the missile's energy budget for the terminal intercept has been cut. The probability of kill against the retreating aircraft drops. The tactical action officer has a choice. Commit another SM-6 to the retreating J-20, or let it go and concentrate remaining interceptors on the 1 aircraft still pressing the attack. He chooses the inbound attacker. The retreating J-20 is tracked, but not targeted with additional rounds. This is not a failure of the system. It is a resource allocation decision that every layered defense has to make. Every interceptor costs money, and there are a finite number of cells in a vertical launch system. The SM-6 costs approximately $4 million per round. Allocating 2 SM-6S to 1 target that may or may not re-engage is a calculation the tactical action officer runs in real time. The retreating J-20 survives this engagement. That matters. It is the honest accounting. The remaining J-20, now alone, its wingman retreating, the rest of its flight down, is 100 miles from the carrier and still closing. It has reached approximately 20,000 feet in its climb. Its AESA radar is searching for F-35S and Hawkeye tracks, trying to build a targeting solution for a PL-15 launch. Its radar warning receiver is active, watching for the SM-6 seekers. The SM-6 tracking this aircraft is now approximately 40 nautical miles away and closing at Mach 3.5. At this range, the active seeker has locked. The J-20 pilot sees the seeker lock alarm, executes a last-ditch defensive maneuver, a hard pull into the missile, attempting to force it to overshoot, and deploys chaff. The SM-6 is not an old technology missile. Its active seeker has significant tracking capability against maneuvering targets. The proximity fuse detonates within lethal range. The 3rd J-20 is down. The 4th is running west. The carrier strike group has absorbed no strikes. The carrier's flight deck remains operational. The E-2D Hawkeye is still orbiting, still tracking. The Arleigh Burke has expended 5 SM-6 missiles, and the forward F-35Cs have expended 4 AIM-120DS. The second Arleigh Burke, the cruiser, and the carrier's own close-in defenses, including phalanx CIWS systems on the carrier itself, were never required to engage. The outer net held. What actually decided this engagement had nothing to do with any single platform. Here's what this tells us about modern naval warfare. The American advantage in this scenario was not the SM-6's range, not the F-35 stealth, not the E-2D's radar. It was the speed at which those three systems shared a common picture. The E-2D detected a faint return. That return became a track. That track flew across a CEC data link to a destroyer's Aegis system, which used it to build a fire control solution for a missile that the destroyer's own radar could not have guided independently. The F-35S received the same track and fired their own weapons in a coordinated sequence designed to complicate the J-20 pilot's defensive reactions. 3 layers of the net fired in coordination against targets that believed they were approaching undetected, because the kill web had been working on them for 11 minutes before the first American weapon flew. The J-20's stealth is real. Its radar cross-section is genuinely small against the frequencies that most surface-to-air systems use. What the stealth shaping cannot defeat is a UHF airborne radar, optimized specifically for low observable targets, feeding continuous track data to a distributed network of shooters that can engage at ranges the J-20 pilots may not have accounted for. One detail that stuck with me working through this: the J-20 pilots in this scenario were never given a fair fight. Not because the American technology is magic. It is not. But because the carrier group's sensor net had 9 minutes of track data on them before the first defensive weapon fired. 9 minutes in a modern air engagement is a geological epoch. It is the difference between a prepared, coordinated, multi-layer intercept and a scramble. The honest accounting, though, includes the retreating J-20. One aircraft survived this engagement, in a larger, more sophisticated strike. The kind that Chinese military planning almost certainly contemplates. The penetrating aircraft layer would not be 4 jets on one vector. It would be part of a simultaneous raid that includes DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missiles arriving from outside the strike group's intercept envelope, electronic warfare aircraft degrading the E-2D's radar picture, and anti-radiation missiles targeting the Hawkeye itself. The E-2D is the most important aircraft in this engagement. It is also the one that cannot defend itself. What does this mean for the balance of power in the Pacific? The Carrier Strike Group remains the most capable mobile air defense and power projection system in the world. The layered net. E-2D eyes, Aegis brain, SM-6 and F-35 teeth represents decades of operational refinement that no other Navy has replicated in its entirety. The Chinese Navy has made extraordinary advances in the last 15 years. The Type 055 destroyer is a genuine large displacement surface combatant with a capable anti-air suite. The J-20 is a real 5th-generation threat. The DF-21D and DF-26 anti-ship ballistic missiles represent a capability category that American naval planners did not have to worry about 20 years ago. But the CEC networked Carrier Strike Group, operating in the open ocean with its E-2D Hawkeye airborne, has a picture-sharing speed that Chinese naval aviation has not yet demonstrated the ability to defeat at the system level. The kill web's value is not any single sensor or shooter. It is the latency, the speed between detection and engagement authorization, that the network enables. Think about this from the carrier group commander's perspective. In this engagement, the first weapon fired was an AIM-120D from a forward F-35C, guided by data from an E-2D that the J-20 pilots almost certainly did not know was tracking them. The J-20's stealth was real. The detection was real. Both things were true simultaneously, because the question was never whether the J-20 could evade any single sensor. It was whether it could evade a distributed net of sensors working together faster than the aircraft could close the distance. The answer, in this scenario, was no. But the margin matters. The retreating J-20 survived. In a more complex raid, that margin compresses. Is it the airborne radar net or the missile screen that the carrier leans on first? And what happens when one of them goes down before the other? Drop your answer in the comments. We read every one. The Pacific line is held, for now, in this scenario. Not by any wonder weapon, but by the speed of shared awareness. The E-2D finds, the Aegis fuses, the SM-6 and F-35 close the door. And the math of a 4-ship J-20 strike runs into the math of dozens of sensors and shooters, networked, waiting. That network is what the US Navy has spent 30 years building, and understanding why it works. The physics, the latency, the kill web logic tells you more about the real balance of power in the Pacific than any headline will. If you want to understand what happens when the threat is not 4 jets, but 40 missiles arriving simultaneously, the DF-21D saturation scenario, that breakdown is already up. Stay with us.